It is a story, the specific story you're tracking in Thacker Pass, Nevada, this potential site for a lithium mine. This is, of course, a divisive topic. It's splitting local populations. There's arguments on both sides, pros and cons. But it does come down to the fact that why are they trying to build this line? Why are they trying to build this mine? Because we're trying to get off coal and gas, get off the fossil fuels, right? So that's a good thing. But as you've discovered, it's not that easy, not that simple to say it's a good thing when there are some negative impacts.
Yeah, I mean, no solution comes without sacrifice. And so throughout the series, actually, we do 2 episodes in Thacker Pass in Nevada because that's the site of this very controversial mine proposal. And so the heart of the series is lithium. So I started looking at, okay, like what's a really big solution, potential solution that we can implement? And it's transitioning from fossil fuels to renewable energy, electrifying everything. And, that's cars, it's buses, sure, it's transportation, but it's also the grid. It's like putting gigantic batteries on the power grid so that we can store renewable energy, wind and solar specifically, because, the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow all the time. So I was like, all right, well, if you need batteries, what goes in them? Lithium. And people have been telling me for years that lithium is this huge bottleneck. It's all around, like it's not rare, but it's all stuck in the earth or in, brine, bubbling hot, salty water under the earth's crust. So I started looking at ways that people are trying to get it and where they're trying to get it. Because right now the U.S. produces basically, 0 of our own lithium. China controls the vast majority of the global lithium market. And it involves this like dirty old extractive industry that has this historical baggage. Like it's mining on some level. Now, later in the season, we're going to go to the Salton Sea in Southern California, where there are proposals that are more promising, that are less environmentally damaging, somewhat less controversial, no less complicated or dramatic or dishy. But it's just it's like a fascinating business story. It's a person story. There are billions of dollars at stake here and like a dash of geopolitics. Kind of has it all.
Before we get into the controversy even more around lithium mining, can you give us some context on just how much lithium usage could cut down on carbon emissions over time? Maybe just even the magnitude for those who have not gone so deep
totally.
on lithium before.
We're all just starting to go deep on lithium because everybody's sort of realizing this all at the same time.
That's all of us.
I can tell you that the global lithium market, just some numbers behind that. So lithium is the key ingredient in batteries. Like we all know that from our iPhones, right? Lithium ion batteries.
I just heard acid my whole life, battery acid. Is it lithium
no,
acid?
I mean, there's lots of different minerals and
the
metals
acid
that
is?
make up batteries. And people have heard about cobalt, for example, because there's like some really awful mining practices that go along with that in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. But lots of the metals and minerals in batteries can be replaced. You can make batteries without cobalt. But right now, lithium is pretty much irreplaceable in batteries. It's the one thing that you kind of can't do without for various chemistry-related reasons. Right now, the global lithium market is like about $56 billion. The projection is that specifically because of electric cars, not to mention all of these other batteries, the market will be more like $220 billion by 2028. So it's just a phenomenally fast-growing market. Obviously, the first thing that's going to feed is electric vehicles. And even when you sort of factor in, like, the fact that once you have lithium, you have to send it to a battery manufacturing plant in China or Korea and then ship it back all over the world. Like, there's a carbon footprint to creating batteries, no question. Even so, industry analysts that we talk to say that an electric car over the lifetime of a vehicle compared to an internal combustion engine is still 40 to 50% more efficient because there are so much fewer emissions and there are so many fewer pieces in a car.
But the phrase greenwashing is so interesting. With greenwashing and marketing and PR from corporations who are just trying to show that they're on the right side of history, do you think corporations are properly incentivized to tackle climate change, or do you think still at this point it's mostly for brownie points?
I think it's a little bit of both, but you do have, I am firmly of the opinion that kind of like top down is despair and bottom up is hope. So consumers drive policy. They have to have a thing to consume that is real. And so, for example, it's really useful to track the entire life cycle of an electric car and determine that over the lifetime of that vehicle, it's quantifiable. Like you can actually do the math. You can have the numerator be one thing and the denominator be another, and then go, okay, over the 20-year lifespan of a vehicle, this is 40 to 50% fewer emissions. That is true. And so people can say, all right, well, maybe I don't need 2 electric cars, but if I buy one, that's still better. And if I put solar panels and a battery on my house and decentralize from the grid, I'm generating renewable energy and I'm consuming less. And you're probably going to need to like replace your windows and your light bulbs and all of those things too. Corporations will be incentivized by the behavior of all of those people swimming in the same direction. It doesn't mean every single person, but we have seen, I think, look, even greenwashing is a response to a market force. That is a response to a consumer desire. And so if you can take the greenwashing up a level and call corporations out when it's real and tell a nuanced, layered story about what solution really means, right? It's never going to be a magic bullet. It's never every single thing all at once, but it's a whole lot of things moving together that get us to a better place.
So on the one hand, we have these startups that are tackling these solutions. And then you have these large tech companies that are a huge part of the problem, but making promises. You have Apple, for example, promising to be carbon neutral for its entire supply chain by 2030. Amazon has their climate pledge fund, a lot of promises across the board. But then Amazon has essentially manufactured our need to get packages right away, the emissions from delivery vehicles and just the packaging that we receive in our homes. What responsibility do these tech companies have, and does it feel like they actually mean it at this point?
They have so much responsibility because everyone does. And I would say that some of them mean it more than others. And the way to parse whether a company means it or not is to look for the difference between carbon neutral and carbon zero, just as one simple example. So Microsoft actually is a super forward-thinking company when it comes to the environment. And they're a company who has announced that they will not just be carbon neutral, because there are 1 million stories that we could all do about this idea of offsets. Carbon neutral just means that you, in some cases, continue to use as much fossil fuel-based energy as you ever did, but you either finance a new solar or wind project somewhere else, or you buy credits, renewable energy credits, based on someone's solar farm in, for example, a totally different state.
And because we are solutions oriented here, for our listeners who I think are mostly not big tech execs or government officials, what are some of the steps that we can take right now, in addition to looking out for things like carbon zero instead of carbon neutral? I think that was a really good piece of advice. What should we be doing? What should we be looking out for to actually contribute and not feel like what we're doing
overwhelmed.
is futile?
I talked to a couple of long-time climate journalists, people who just burned out. They got so overwhelmed and depressed about it. But I will say, one of the more fascinating things I learned is that energy efficiency, which is so boring, is massive. It is actually massive. Like when it comes to just you and your own little personal universe, like windows, better seals on your doors, turning your lights off, buying energy efficient appliances, that stuff that seems so like flossing actually really, really, really matters. In fact, they say that for every step toward energy efficiency that you take, you get a 4-fold return. Like you do 4 times better for the climate and reduce your carbon emissions by 4 times. It is like probably the single most impactful thing you can do.
If you like what you saw and you like what you heard, you can listen to the entire episode of this podcast, Business Casual, anywhere you get your podcasts. And please go ahead and subscribe to the Morning Brew YouTube channel and go ahead and click on that alarm bell, that thing right there, so you can be alerted anytime there's a new video.